We all have those times in our life that we would like to omit and forget altogether. I would like to think of those times as learning experiences which contributed to my character, for without them my life would not have been the way it was. My high school sweetheart came back into my life and we married early in 1993. I moved with him to West Bank, British Columbia. We rented a place 20 minutes southeast of Kelowna that was on a farm. Late that spring, I drove back to Saskatchewan to bring Raisin and Fury out to the farm near Kelowna. I had been miserable without my horses there. A friend of mine traveled with me to come for a visit. My friend stayed for a few days and we went riding together. On our first day out, we went along the highway in the ditch beside the neighbor's pasture. I was all for a new adventure to see where I could ride by myself later on. It was nearly 2 miles to the nearest logging road on the other side of the highway to go for a decent trail ride. My friend rode Raisin and I rode Fury with my Aussie saddle. We crossed the highway and went up the logging trail another 2 miles before we turned around to go back. It felt strange to me to ride deep in the pine trees in the mountains. I felt as though the trees blocked my view and my directions were mixed up. I was used to riding on the wide open prairies. We made our way back to the highway and crossed it safely. As we were going back to the farm, a semi drove by, which caused Raisin to jump into Fury, scaring him too. Fury did a complete spin on the spot, which I rode with no difficulty. I asked my friend if she was looking at the vehicle when it drove by, and she answered that she had. I told her we should try something different because if I was riding by myself, I would still have to ride along the highway and didn't like the horses spooking. I explained that when the next vehicle drove by, we would not look at the vehicle but focus past it and think of something calming, not paying any attention to the vehicle at all as it drove by. A few minutes passed before our next vehicle came driving down the road. This was going to be a real test. It couldn't be something simple like a car or a truck. Even a semi with a regular trailer would have been fine. Oh no, coming down the highway toward us was a loaded semi with bright orange tarps flapping in the wind. I estimated 30 seconds before it went by. I talked the whole time. I talked to the horses and I talked my friend through the whole process. We were looking past the semi with the flapping tarps like it didn't exist, and we're thinking about cool spring water, warm sunshine, and lush green grass. We took deep breaths and remained calm as though we were sitting in a nice comfortable spot. No truck, no tarps, it's not even there. Raisin and Fury continued walking as though that truck with its tarps were invisible as it flapped noisily by us at highway speed. After the truck was gone, we both sighed with relief and then shouted with glee that it had worked. This is a tried and true method that I use any time I don't want a horse to be afraid of anything. Remain calm like that scary thing isn't even there. Often I will protect my horse from the potential scary thing by moving the horse a little further away from the object, or if online, I will put myself between the horse and whatever seems threatening to my horse. That summer in Kelowna, I advertised to give private riding lessons and had one young student that came out twice a week to ride. She was a small girl of 11 who had numerous surgeries on her legs. She was born with some malformation of the lower limbs and was only able to walk, but not run. She was a beautiful little girl with a heartwarming smile. Her mom was a wonderful woman and was so excited that I was willing to give her horse-loving daughter riding lessons. Raisin had much to offer this little girl. He had his big white nose that needed kissing. He was patient, loved kids, and he was mobility. For the first few lessons, we just walked around getting to know each other, and I showed her how easy Raisin was to turn. Her legs didn't work very well to start with, but with each ride, her legs became progressively stronger. I could also control Raisin's gaits from the ground, using voice commands. If I said ho, Raisin would stop. Now there's a reason I said ho to Raisin and not whoa. The reason was that when I retrained Raisin, the rope horse, to Raisin, the lesson horse, I would use all my aids, including my voice. This enabled me to control Raisin from the ground, no matter who was riding him. I used ho because whoa sounded too much like walk, and I did not want my horse confused. The little girl blossomed over the course of the summer that she came for lessons with me and Raisin. Long before summer was over, she was able to slow lope on Raisin, and her smile was inspiring to see. If ever I had a down moment, that little girl's beaming smile would wipe it all away. Her mother willingly paid me for riding lessons, but her words of thanks for giving her daughter the ability to run free that summer was what meant the most to me. Near the end of summer, Raisin slipped on a rock in the creek that ran through the horse pasture and cut his fetlock wide open. It was a gaping Y-shaped wound. Luckily, I caught it right away and began the long process of healing. I found some great wound gel, and that little bottle of gel produced 1 heaping tablespoon of gel every day for weeks until the wound healed. Somehow that does not seem physically possible, but it happened. I had to wash the wound every day and run cold water on Raisin's fetlock for 20 minutes, then put the gel on and bandage it up. Raisin was a great patient, and the wound eventually healed. Later that fall, the work ran out for my husband, so we packed up and moved back to Swift Current. I really hated living in British Columbia. The cloudy winter days with no sunshine were too depressing for me. Raisin and Fury went back to the farm at Mom and Dad's, and I went to care for and ride them there. We spent the winter renovating a little older house that we bought in town, and thus passed the winter of 1993. In 1994, our marriage crumbled and I moved out. We were divorced by June. At this point in my life, I could not move back home with my mom and dad. I needed my own space. I rented an apartment in town, but still spent more time at the farm than at the apartment. It was a place to sleep. I enjoyed working with my dad and Chad that year on the construction. Dad insisted that I had too many horses, I couldn't ride them all, so forced the issue until I sold Mighty. Mighty was sold at a ranch horse sale in early June. It was a mistake. I should not have sold him either, but I never saw him again. What was done was done. The sale of Mighty enabled me to order a top-of-the-line Australian stock saddle from the Stadium Saddle Company that I had toured when I was in Australia. They were in the process of closing their doors when I ordered my saddle, and I got one of the last saddles that company made. When the saddle arrived and I unpacked it, I was in awe. It was the most beautiful leather I had ever touched. The saddle was exquisitely made, and I couldn't wait to try it. I rode Raisin and Fury many miles in that saddle. I have never had any trouble fitting it on any horse, and I have never been unseated by any horse while riding in it. The Australian stock saddle from Stadium Saddle Company is still in my tack room and is one of my most favorite saddles today. My Great Dane Destry lived at the farm with Mom and Dad. He would come along with me when I went riding and was a great companion. Late that fall, Destry got sick, and no amount of medicine was going to make him better. I found out afterward that the bigger the dog breed, the shorter the lifespan. Destry was 7 years old. We had the vet come to the farm so Destry didn't have to leave his home, and I had my pet humanely euthanized. It was a sad day for my family to say goodbye to a wonderful dog and friend. Chad came to help me cry, and we buried Destry beneath the trees behind the shop. I made a point of doing something in memory of Destry. I found a photograph that I had taken of Destry lying on guard in the grass, and spent 5 days on a pencil drawing that measures 14 by 22 inches of that scene. It is titled Beloved Guardian, is professionally framed, and still hangs on the wall at Mom and Dad's. About a week after Destry was gone, my mom told me something that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. She said that it was early in the morning and she could feel a cold breeze coming in the house. She got up to see where it was coming from, and when she came out of the hallway from the bedroom, she could see that the patio door was open about 8 inches, just as far as Destry used to open the door when he would let himself in. When Destry was living, he could slide open the patio door with his nose to let himself in from the outside of the house. He was the only dog we ever had that could do that. Mom said that she closed the door, then checked the whole house. She didn't feel upset that this had happened and was calm about the whole thing. Did Destry's ghost come back into my parents' house one last time? I guess we will never know.